What's up, creepers and geekers? Chris, the Atari Creep. How's everyone doing today? That is going to wiggle a lot, and that's why I don't use this stupid tiny little tripod often. Oh, looks like we're going to have to deal with it. Happy Super Bowl Sunday, go Pats! Regardless of the outcome, this is going to be an amazing head-to-head competition between some amazing athletes. I'm going to be able to sit down, eat wings, get fucking agita and chest pains over the stress of it all, and then talk shit about it until September, of course, when football starts back up. So, we're going to be talking about Intellivision versus the Atari VCS, okay? Not in your typical this versus that. So, basically what I'm trying to say is I am more for preaching things that you love versus spewing about things you hate. And on the Atari Creep Facebook and Instagram pages, I put up an image of the two consoles, and underneath I said something to the tune of, without being a dickhead about it, make an argument for either or. And I chose that wording specifically. I didn't want you to tell me why one was better than the other, okay? I wanted your brain to instinctively think of one and an idea. You post it down into the comment section of either of the social medias that I posted it on. It was on my Twitter too, but it was more of a share over than it was a straight post, so it probably didn't get as much traffic. Oddly enough, this is probably the most active Facebook post I have made on the Atari Creep Facebook group, or it's a page. Is it a group or a page? You tell me. I'm not really astute to these things, nor do I care that much. But it's a way for me to interact with you, so it's there, regardless of what it is. So, I received what I would say an enormous response, compared, of course, to my normal, maybe a like or two here and there. Instagram was pretty typical. So I got a whole bunch of answers here, and I'm going to read them to you because a lot of these are pretty interesting. A lot of them are pretty flatlined, you know, your typical, you know, I like this because of that. I like that because of this, and, you know, whatever. And then I'll give you my thoughts. Again, not trying to convince you of anything, because you love what you love and you don't like what you don't like. And I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you you're wrong for liking or not liking something, because there is no right or wrong here. So don't be that dickhead down below telling everybody you're fucking wrong because the Intellivision blippity blah blah and oh, the Atari VCS is blah blah blah. You know, that dickhead needs a fucking punch in the mouth. Just tell us what you love about whatever and fuck you hate on the other thing, okay? It's not warranted here. I don't care about it. So, we have, our first one is a gentleman by the name of Retro Game Dag. We're going to read the Instagram ones first. And he writes, the Intellivision controls were terrible at best, though it had better graphics on many games. In my book, though, playability is greater than graphics, so Atari greater than Intellivision. Very valid point. 16-bit on the Instagram says the 2600, it's just so iconic. And while the Intellivision is technically superior, nothing, and I mean nothing, because he put that in capitals, can capture the charm of the 2600. And you know what? There is something to be said about that. There is an iconic thing to the Atari. Not too many people talk about the Intellivision outside of our world, you know, but they all know about the Atari. And they make their little quips about, oh yeah, I remember this game, and blah, blah, whatever. And I think simplicity is also a key here. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Retro Game Dad also went on to say, very nice heavy sixer. Thank you for that, sir. You can thank Willie of Arcades USA for that generous donation to the Atari Creep. So, let's scroll down here a little bit. We have a gentleman named Lettuce Boy who basically just says, just stop. This is like having to choose between my favorite child. And then I explained to him, no, I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to tell me the first thing that comes to your mind about either or. Make an argument. That's fine. Atari_kid goes on and says, you know that I'll argue for the 2600. So many more amazing choices for games. And the Intellivision controllers just don't have the same ease of gameplay. Again, going on the whole controller thing. Again, I will touch upon a lot of these things in my personal thoughts and what have you. But yeah, moving on. So that looks to me like all of the Instagram ones. So let's go over to the Atari Creep Facebook page. And this one I'm gonna blur out people's names because it's literally their names and I don't want anyone getting upset. So our first comment comes from who I know on YouTube is called Coleco Joe. And he says, Intellivision, period. I'm zen with the controller. Really dig them on the D&D games and in capital, Burger Time. You know what? Burger Time may not look the greatest on the Atari 2600, but I think it plays well. You know what's going on if you know what Burger Time's all about. But when I finally did pick up the Intellivision controller and played Burger Time on it, I will have to say I think it played better. Of course, it looked and sounded better. I mean, that's hello, Captain Obvious, right? But that's one of those rare games for me personally that I think the Intellivision controller actually works really well for. Either that or it's just a better port. Que sera, sera. A gentleman named Adam, who I also know is that Retro Gamer Dad from the other, from Instagram, just simply put VCS in capitals. Okay? Diana goes on to say, Atari, no explanation needed, LOL. Well, I'm laughing out loud because she's right. You don't have to explain yourself. Who the fuck am I for you to have to explain to me? David goes on to say, Intellivision keypads were better control, but discs are thumb numb. Or numb thumbs, excuse me. It's still early, okay? 2600 H6 cleaner controls, simple joystick ruled. Okay, paraphrasing. Rob goes on to say, Atari equals joystick, INTV equals disc thingy, phone looking controller. So I don't know if he was giving us a fact or if he was trying to say something with that, but either way, again, valid point. Those are true. Corey says, I prefer Atari over Intellivision because I don't care for the Intellivision controllers. Again, we're back to that controller. And if you've watched any of my streams or my videos with me re-exploring the Intellivision, getting back into it, getting reacquainted with it, it's one of my biggest common complaints. But for a lot of the games, I'm kind of getting used to it. And I'm starting to appreciate it a little bit more. I still like a nice responsive joystick. Go ahead and make your dick jokes. But yeah, I'm totally with everybody on that one. Brian of Brian's Man Cave goes on to say, Intellivision, that's no surprise here. Because he's an Intellivision guy. Better graphics, better sound, no shovelware. I disagree with that. All consoles have shovelware, okay? Come on. Atari just happened to have more because it was more popular. Just fun and endorsed by George Plimpton. All right, well, guess what? You got a good point there. Then, of course, he puts the graphic of George hanging out with the two versions of baseball for the Atari and, of course, the Intellivision. Another Brian, unrelated to Brian of Brian's Man Cave, says Atari and a slight edge. And I'm going to speculate and say that individual is talking probably because of the controller. Now let me close this down and let me shut it off. And we'll get to what I personally think. If I were to pick between the two, of course I am going to go Atari because it's what I grew up with. I did have a lust for, I did have a deep-seated jealousy for the one Intellivision I knew that existed in my world that I could very barely ever get my hands on. Again, don't want to break down individual things. The console look, the console this, the control of this. But I can't pick between the two consoles. I think they both look amazing. I think the Atari 2600 as a console for your television setup looks amazing. I think it's perfect on top of the TV. It's got that nice angle. The cartridge goes in like that. I think the television looks like the interior of a 72 fucking Oldsmobile Cutlass. Not as a negative. I think they're both sexy. The controllers, I have to say, you already know my opinion on that. I like a nice, simple, pick up and play kind of deal. And one of the things I didn't like about the Intellivision is if you don't have the manual or sometimes the overlays, some of the games are kind of impossible to play. Thank God for the internet. That's all I have to say. If you're not smart enough to go on the internet and figure out how to, and I've done it, like for bowling, I went live with my girlfriend, and we played bowling on the Intellivision a couple of weeks back on YouTube, and somehow that one didn't stay uploaded. I can't find it. Maybe I hit the wrong button and deleted it, but I downloaded and printed up an overlay for her because I only had the one. So it's easy enough to get that stuff, but think 10, 15, maybe even 20 years ago, if you just picked up one at a yard sale and you didn't have that information, these games would be tough unless you knew somebody who had an Intellivision. They could explain it all to you, So for its simplicity, of course I have to go for the Atari. Graphics, sound, and all that stuff, it depends on what you're talking about, but of course the majority of it would go to Mattel Electronics Intellivision. I love the crowd sounds in the Intellivision. It's almost like white noise, very comforting to me. I don't know why, I don't know how. I didn't grow up with it constantly. I grew up with the Atari sounds. But I think as far as that's concerned, again, you have to go game by game basis. So, talking about the library, yes, Atari had quite a bit more, considerable a bit more, but it was a lot more crap than anything. But they did have the big names, okay? And when it comes with Intellivision, to me personally, it's more like they didn't have the names, so they made up their own versions of those, which in a lot of cases work out just fine. And that's how I look at Pac-Man on the Atari 2600. I look at it as something more like that than actually Pac-Man, and it still plays like Pac-Man. We did a whole video on it, so I can't be as hateful on it that a lot of people tend to be. So if you look at it that way, you still have your Space Invaders, but look at it this way. It's a different version of Space Invaders. It still plays well, and it may look and sound different, but it's the same ideas, the same gameplay. It just has a different variant to it. So I don't look at it as a clone. I look at it as not necessarily the same, but different variant. But it's like taking something that you play all the time and get pretty burnt out on for a while, and it kind of brings it, life back into it for you, that style of gameplay. So for that, bravo. It may not say Space Invaders on it, and that'll bug a lot of people, but that's fine with me. So as far as the library is concerned, I think they both have solid titles. There's a lot of games I like much better on the Intellivision than I do the Atari, even though I grew up playing the Atari one. Beam Rider, great example. We just went through a whole thing with Beam Rider. I played the Atari version all growing up. I picked up the one for the Intellivision and recently started playing it instantly. Like instantly. I was like, this is the shit right here. Not that the Atari one's bad, but fuck the Atari one for right now. This is awesome. And yeah, and anything else you want to throw in there. I think if it were to come down to it, for me, it would be the simplicity and ease of pick up and play for the Atari. Whereas both systems were marketed to different people. Yes, they were trying to get them into everybody's home. Anyone who wanted to play video games. But intelligent television, I mean, there's something to be said about that. It was a smarter person's console. Whereas the Atari was a simple, mindless, dumbed down, not in all cases, please don't fucking quote me on stupid shit, console that was just easy to pick up and play. Not a kiddie's console, but the Intellivision was marketed for kind of a slightly more intelligent, maybe nerdier audience. So, given all that, again, who is the real winner here? Me. Because of what's in this cup right here. But I'll say it again. You and me. We can play all these games all day long, and we can enjoy having a friendly debate about which port of Burger Time is better, the Intellivision, and which port of Frogs and Flies is better, Atari 2600. And that's really all there is to it. And as long as we're more spewing what we love than being venomous about what we hate, I think it just creates something better in the long run and makes a better community. I think that's why I like the Atari.io community. I wasn't even going to mention them in this video because I'm pretty sure you guys are sick of hearing me talk about them. But I think that's what makes the Atari.io community a little more enticing to me than, say, the Atari Age, which is a much larger group, a lot more resource. There just seems to be a lot more dickheads going on in a group like that than at the Atari.io group. We talk about what we love, and if we disagree with that individual, we have dialogue instead of debate. And that's really all there is to it. So guys, if you didn't see my posts on Instagram and or Facebook, and you'd like to chime in without being a dickhead, make an argument for either or down in the comments. Go ahead and leave me feedback, thumbs up, thumbs down. All feedback to the Creep is positive. If you do follow me on Instagram and you're excited about Sunday Night Live, it's not going to happen tonight. Super Bowl, okay? So I do apologize, but we'll come back strong next week, and maybe sometime during the week, maybe Tuesday or something like that. Maybe I'll come on for about a half hour, an hour, and just kind of make up for it. I do that anyway, even if I do attend Sunday Night Live. But my apologies because of Super Bowl. Go Pats. I'm not going to be going live tonight. So guys, again, go ahead and leave feedback down below. Until next time, take care, creep it real, be safe tonight, but enjoy the game, and bye-bye.